We are back with episode 6 of season 5, and before we jump in, I want to highlight that we've partnered with our good friends over at Schiller to co-present this season. I've been advising Schiller for the last year as they help consult and market some of the most vibrationally aligned companies in the space. They're releasing their new season of Curated alongside this season of We Do a Little, so be on the lookout for new episodes from them, including some of our favorite people such as Brian Brinkman, Sasha Stiles, Chris F., and more. Links to their podcast are in the description of this episode. We'll also be doing a little event during Art Basel Miami together this year. Stay tuned for more details. If you'd like to sponsor season 5 of We Do a Little, please reach out to info@schiller.xyz. That is info@schiller.xyz. If you listen to this pod on X or YouTube, you'll notice this episode doesn't have any video. Due to a hard drive failure, we unfortunately lost the video feeds for this episode, but luckily the audio is still intact. Without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. In the 6th episode of season 5, we are joined by our dear friends Dave Krugman and Alien. Dave is a badass artist, photographer, and the founder of Allships, which is a culture company built on crypto rails. Alien is a world-renowned chef, mushroom expert, and mixed media artist who's also the head of dining for Allships. We dive into all things fungi and psilocybin, how art can be enhanced by psychedelics, Allships and culture and crypto, deep reflections on the usage of time, family, parenthood, and so much more. As always, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Redbeard, D's, and guests may be invested in companies or tokens talked about on this podcast.
Okay, D's, we are here for episode number 4 in 2024 of Shipwrecked. And this is a very special episode because I have you, who are one of my closest friends on Twitter.
On Twitter
and
off Twitter.
And IRL.
We're kind of friends off Twitter.
Yeah,
a little bit.
now we've graduated. But now I have two of my closest people that I love in New York with me and us. And that is, are we going to call you Alien?
Yeah, we'll stick with that.
Alien. And Dave, who, by the way, I don't know if you know this, has now broken the record for being being a guest more than anybody on We Do a Little, correct?
Yes, this episode, Dave is now the leader.
This is an accomplishment. I don't think
I honestly, I don't even know what to do after this.
Right.
I feel like I've accomplished all my
You've
life.
accomplished all of it.
Put that in your bio, like 3-time repeat. We Do a Little.
It's on my link tree already.
He is the most sought out guest for our show. And We Do a Little for both.
Well, we have the overlap, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Dave was one of our first guests we had on the main pod.
Right.
And then we decided we had to talk to both you at once because the dynamic when you're both together is different.
There's a good
It's very
dynamic.
different than when it's just Dave by himself.
Right.
And then this is an even different dynamic.
Didn't we have one more that we had Dave with somebody else?
We had Dave
two
with...
Shipwrecked episodes with him.
Is this episode 4 for Dave?
I think so.
I don't think so.
I think it's episode 3.
3? Okay,
3.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Still a
Benny's did
record.
another episode.
Let's not get all caught up on that.
Yeah.
Anyway, now that we got that out of the way.
Yeah. We're here with some amazing people. Everybody knows who Dave is. Amazing photographer, community builder, one of the backbones of our community, and so important.
Founder of
We are
Allships.
all here to introduce, I feel like, to the world, this amazing person that Dave introduced me to, I should know, Alien, who is I'm
the most
not
important community network builder, not behind
correct.
a big Twitter account.
You know what I'm going to do?
in
I'm
the
going to let
space.
Dave, because he's so poetic and he has a silver tongue to like explain this introduction, because I think he'll do it best. Are you okay with that?
Of course.
Okay.
I'd say Alien is a master of mycology and has been, just a real force for good in terms of uniting the community together through his craft. And I think the entire space is better off because of the work that he does.
Yes, I have gotten multiple text
Thanks, guys.
messages from people who are like, I wish I could get some of your chocolate. I'm like, it's not my chocolate.
Yeah.
It's our friends.
And to be clear, we're talking about shrooms. I just want to be very upfront about this, so we're not going to like hide it. But Alien is, but besides that, you should know that he is a master chef as well.
Yes.
And not just a master chef. He worked at some of the best restaurants in the world, right?
And for some of the most crazy people in the world.
I mean, in and out of different restaurants and all over New York and all over the East Coast. And top 50 restaurants for a while.
How did you get started cooking? Like, is it a family thing that your dad and mom like to do together?
No, it was
or-
sort of like I was forced to get a job. The closest place I could walk to was
Okay.
like the bar and grill down the street, and they needed a dishwasher, and yeah, that kind of like worked out. My dad was like, you can't just like sit home and smoke weed all day long. Like, you have to do something.
I mean, you could, but
I was already doing that, so like he was like, you got to get a job, bro. Like, it's enough's enough.
and when did you realize that you wanted to like really like you loved food and you loved to cook?
I always like loved food, and I guess like I definitely picked it up. Both my grandmothers kind of instilled in me like cooking at home was fun and like making things, and I've always been creative, so that was sort of another outlet for myself to do things. And cooking kind of followed me around. It was always a easy job for me to grab. Like I lived in the West Coast for a little while, and no matter what, I could always just pick up a kitchen job, and yeah, so like that was an easy way for me to just work, and it was a fun thing for me to do. And when I moved back to New York after a few years from the West Coast, I had a choice of going to art school, or I decided pastry school, and yeah, I went to pastry school, and that was sort of my, again, like art outlet of what I was doing. And then from there kind of jumped into high-end restaurants almost immediately. Was running like a Indian spot that was Michelin starred for a little while, and that was really cool. And I worked at this really super high-end restaurant out in New Haven, Connecticut, and that kind of like broke me as a human, and that was good.
But how
but,
did
like,
Is the show The Bear really that honest, or is it more like this
They
one
hit-
where they kill themselves in that movie with Ralph Fiennes?
I really do. The menu is
yeah.
like, I kind of like the menu a lot. That has some really sweet nuances that really hit home. The Bear has some accuracies for sure. I can't like, the first season had some triggers for
Like
me.
you felt it, like
I was like, I had to
Was
turn
that the scene when
turn
they
that
were yelling
shit
at
off.
him?
Yeah, like when he sneaks up behind him, starts screaming at him, like that's
That's how you felt.
kind of real. Yeah.
Wow.
it's kind of
Then like the second season, I just don't really watch because it's just, I find it to be loud, and when I watch TV, I want something like stupid,
Yeah.
easygoing.
Was it his love for food or love for shrooms that attracted you first to him?
Well, I actually met Alien through a bartender that we know.
Yeah, worked at one of the West restaurants that I was pastry chef
And
at.
I went in there and we were talking about mushrooms and how much we love them, me and the bartender. And he's like, oh, you got to meet my friend Alien. And then, so I got his number, and then Alien came over, and it's one of those situations, like this has happened a few times in my life. It actually happened with you too, Benny, where like you meet somebody and you're like, I've known you my whole life.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it was
we've
instantaneous
brotherhood. And I mean, with Alien, it was insane. Like we just sat on my couch and talked about food and mushrooms and everything else on Earth for like an hour. And we were like immediately like, yo, let's go get a beer sometime. Like, and then we did. And then since then we've just been like, you know,
we hung
just
out.
best friends, and it's been awesome. We've been all over the world together.
Has shrooms made you, especially the amazing product that you have, has it opened your mind as an artist?
Yeah, 100%. So I'd love to, this is a great time to give, you know, in our last episodes, I talked all about, you know, how I compare mycelium and the internet and all those little fun analogies, but this is a good time to talk about like the kind of emotional benefits that I've experienced with, you know, psilocybin and stuff like that. So for me, I've always lived with depression. Like it's something that's always been a part of my life. And I didn't really even have the language to understand what I was going through until I was like, you know, 25 or something. And I went through like a really gnarly depression after a breakup. And I just like did not know what was going on. Like I just felt like I was going to die. It was like crazy. So I'm sure other people who have experienced depression like understand what I'm talking about. It's not just being sad. It's like this chasm inside of you that you just cannot figure out how to escape the orbit of. And so I've tried all sorts of different things to kind of keep that feeling at bay. And, you know, I've anything from exercise to antidepressants to everything. And for me, one of the most helpful things I've ever encountered is microdosing psilocybin. And I think that it just gives me this sense of like wholeness. another analogy I would use is like it like fills in the potholes on the road a little bit, so you can just drive a little with less bumps, and it just makes me like it just fills me with gratitude for the human experience and empathy for other people, and it like sticks with me in a way that antidepressants for me always felt like a temporary patch, and psilocybin feels like a tool to actually like address the root problems and to be more empathetic with myself. And so that experience has been really gratifying. And of course, none of this is medical advice.
Never is.
But for me, I like the fact that I think humans have co-evolved with psilocybin for tens of thousands of years. And I think in our environment of evolution, as we like tracked herd animals, we just encountered, this substance and entered into like a co-evolution with this substance where, we propagate mushrooms because we like the effects, even just food, culinary mushrooms, we like the food. But so we propagate them and then they have benefits for us. And so we're in this symbiosis with them. And I think that's really, really profound and fascinating. So I think the way that psilocybin has affected my art is by freeing me from a lot of the anxiety and fear and doubt and depression that is often a roadblock to my creative process.
Wow.
I gotta ask Alien why you chose the pastry chef route over the what's the normal chef, culinary school, or like what?
I mean, I get
Not
like
to completely
savory
180,
chef.
but I've been stuck on.
It's all connected.
Yeah,
Because you were talking about the
we'll
art
definitely get back
and
to the psilocybin. Don't worry, I'm not worried.
Yeah, and you're talking about the creative process, and on the outside looking in, it seems like the pastry chef stuff is more artistic in the sense that.
It's definitely. So like, I was kind of looking at. I've always looked at food as sort of just another art medium, and pastry school was like my reasoning for not going to art school, where it was cheaper, less time, and I could get right back into working.
And there was no like, I'm gonna go to pastry school so I can make mushroom chocolates. Like that wasn't the
no, not
that wasn't
not
the
at all.
idea from the get go.
Yeah, I went to pastry school because I thought like it would be really fun to be like a pastry chef in a high end restaurant and kind of just like throw down these crazy like masterpiece sort of things. I find it to be really cool as in the mentality of like it's disposable art, as the like it's you're making a piece, it's gone before you know it, and it's never going to come back again. So like you're redoing the same process, but every single time it's different, and like you're trying to do the same thing over and over and over again. That's where it becomes like defeating though. After a while, you're like, okay,
I've already done this.
Yeah, I'm doing this like a million times a day, and it's like exhausting.
Did you do shrooms a lot before you started getting into mycelium, or?
I mean,
a pastry chef.
I've eaten mushrooms, like since high school, where like you were handed the large dose and like freaked the fuck out. And my friend wouldn't like, we had to watch the wall every time, and like that was horrifying. But as I got older, sort of like in California a little bit, like eating like acid and mushrooms with some of these like older hippie people, and it was not sort of in my front run, but it was always around. And yeah, like in the past maybe 10 years, I've sort of been, I don't know, I feel like I was almost inoculated by the spores one day walking in the woods, and like it just kind of hit me, and like he was like telling me that I have to grow mushrooms.
It's really crazy. Like we've been foraging with Alien before, and when we're from upstate somewhere, I see a mushroom, I feel like we share it, and you have like a depth of knowledge of mushrooms now. Like you,
it was a hobby that it's always, so like foraging's always been a hobby of mine. So I've researched fungi and like wild mushrooms and wild plants for, I mean, over a decade now at least. And I've worked for some schools and found some new like edible varieties on the East Coast, down in South Carolina and in Connecticut. So I have
like mushrooms that had never been eaten before.
Not at this point. This was like an edible sea plant.
Okay.
But no, I'm sure that I picked a shit ton of mushrooms that haven't been picked before. There's so many varieties that I do know a lot, but we'll still go in the woods, and I feel stupid sometimes because they'll be like, what is this? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, there's tons, like there's crosses in the woods, and like, they're just making and changing and going at all times. Like we know nothing.
So I think like you said about being a pastry chef is like very artistic, and
I didn't know how to word it correctly, but it feels more artistic. Like,
but there's some amazing artistic, views. Like these are just like, I mean, we could zoom in, but so when you send us pictures, and Dave was the one who kind of turned me on to showing me the photography that he took of your shrooms, which I'll ask Dave first and then to you, is like there's something about the way that these spores grow that make them very artistic as well. And I know that you connect that.
It's beautiful. I mean, it makes it easy for me to make sort of like an artistic photograph of some of these things where it's just already so unreal. Like between just like the mycelium growing or how the spore print falls out of the mushrooms, or like them fruiting. It's really a beautiful thing. It's been like fun for me to create and collaborate with the fungi and like domesticating things and bringing them from the wild inside. Like actually, this one is a reishi mushroom that I've collected off a tree in Brooklyn and domesticated inside, and now I'm like growing for medicinal purposes as well as like making sculptures out of the mycelium. So like it's
sculptures we got to talk
fun.
about. So you have
I should have brought one
collection that came out of photos of the sculptures you're making. How do you think about, like, I don't even know how to phrase.
His collection is actually photographs of some of like the varieties he's growing, but I don't think he's
those aren't
the sculptures.
No,
the
those
sculptures are crazy cool.
You should see them. They're insane.
Oh shit.
Yeah, sculpture, like it's molded mycelium in different molds. So like I have these skulls and stuff that have mushrooms growing out of the skulls.
We can say that now because this is coming out in 2 months.
I'm not worried either. Like
that's
I've been
awesome.
teasing
So
them
you
for a
actually
while.
are having a mold that it's growing into.
Yeah, I'm growing them in different shapes and trying to make fun, bigger things soon. Just strictly out of wood chips and different mycelium. Most of the stuff that I've found myself, or somebody that I've known closely that we've been working with.
So Dave, when you take the photography, the way that the spores connect and fall, and like, I know that you have that eye for those things, but there's got to be this connection. I mean, like they're so, like, it's almost like they were, like the way that shrooms grow, it's just like they grow artistically.
Well, what's cool is like they're very fractal. And the fruiting body of a mushroom is just what pops up to spread more spores, but the actual network of mycelium is the most interesting thing about mushrooms, in my opinion. And they're decentralized organisms, so they any part of the network can regenerate the whole network. There's no center locus of control, and so I just think that kind of makes for beautiful shapes and beautiful things. And, I've gone into the woods with Alien a ton in many different regions. And like the coolest thing is bringing my macro lens and just, we can throw up some pictures that I've taken like of these, like, right here, of just like the infinite complexity, like fractal complexity in it. It's just cool. And it's like abstract art. And, you with a macro lens, you can see things in a way that you can't even see with your own eyes. And that's one of my favorite things about photography, is that like it's like a augmented reality that you can observe the world in new and novel ways. And like one of my favorite ways to observe nature is going out with a macro lens and somebody who knows where to find cool things. So Alien and I have created quite a body of work together. So.
Yeah, if somebody would find us in the woods, like we're just crawling around and like.
What does that look like? Like you're literally just crawling around, like Dave's on the ground with the camera.
Well, like I think I have a pretty good eye for nature too. Like, and I've gotten better from going out with Alien. But like, as a photographer, my eye for detail is like I'll notice like the smallest little bug on the tip of a leaf. Something that like most people just walk straight by. I'll be like, oh, actually, like there's something caught in a spider web here, and like just having that ability.
Spider webs are sick.
Yeah, like having that ability to extract detail from complicated scenes is like something that every photographer learns naturally, and then combining that with like knowledge of the natural world, the combination of those two things makes for some really incredible overlaps.
Well, I mean, Drip Drops is a lot like that.
Yeah. So my project Drip Drop, for example, is like most people just. A puddle to them is just like
a puddle,
and like they just keep walking, and like they're like, oh, this thing's in my way, and they keep moving. But if you just stand there and look at it like for a while and watch the way that light ripples through it, and like all the shapes and patterns and colors and abstract beauty that's happening. You know, that's the difference between a photographer and somebody who's just a pedestrian, right? And so I'm constantly thinking about ways to observe the world in new ways.
Slow down and look at the moment.
Yeah.
How often are you finding or breeding like new mushroom strains to go?
I actually was having a conversation this morning with one of
the shrooms.
different
One of the mushrooms.
I
You were
always
like-
every morning I say good morning to them.
Do you
every
say good morning to your wife first or the mushrooms?
Honestly, the mushrooms, because I'm up before she wakes up and I go to sleep after she goes to sleep. So,
Is your wife real, or is she just
She's real.
a mushroom that you grew into a person?
as far as I know, she's a real person.
Okay.
Yeah, I lucked out with that.
By the
one.
way, his wife is an amazing chef as well.
Yeah, incredible. And I actually met her in pastry school. So it was a.
Was it one
mix
of those
of
moments where like you put a little here and she put a little there, and you guys got like,
The
oh,
flower.
it's adorable.
No, I was actually dating different girls while we were in pastry school.
Oh,
So that was
okay.
different dynamic at the time.
Interesting.
I was talking to a guy about breeding mushrooms, and that last year I sort of was just sticking with genetics and stuff that I've captured and harvested locally, and have been working domestically. A lot of things from New York I like to collect. I'm working with these urban mushrooms and seeing how they non-psychoactive. They won't get you high.
They're still good mushrooms.
Yeah, no, they're great, good for you, like medicinally, most of them. But seeing how they grow in an urban environment versus in the woods, or they tend to have stronger varieties, and so that's what I was doing last year. But this guy, what we were talking about this morning is I want to start doing maybe 1 to 3 new varieties every week, and starting crossing again and making new different cool things. And
Are you scared though, if you do that you could end up making like the Last of Us situation?
I mean, if that's gonna happen, it's gonna happen in the woods anyway, and like there's a whole scenario of body temperature changing and stuff.
Okay, so you actually think the Last of Us situation is possible, where shrooms could like kind of take us over? And
Sure, I mean, anything's possible, but I don't think it's ever going to get to the point where we're completely parasitized by like
do you think the whole network is smarter than the human race?
the fungal network.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're just a pawn in like the Earth's game right now. Where like,
They're just using us.
they were here before us. They're going to be here after us for sure.
So when you're crossing
We're just food at the moment.
mushrooms and you're working on a new strain, if you're doing 3 a week, like how would you?
So I'm saying like I'm gonna start 3 a week. A lot of times they'll get contaminated, and I'm gonna have to double back. Like I'm creating a perfect environment for all like mold and mildews and all fungus, everything that's in the room and that we're breathing in and out. So like it's kind of hard to grow a single spore. So like I'll start 3, maybe I'll get 1 a week that like hits.
I guess my question is going to go more into like the testing and comparisons of the different strains, because it's something that I didn't realize when I got into psilocybin. It's just like, oh, if I have a golden teacher versus albino penis envy versus something else, it's like, oh, it impacts me differently.
Totally. Those are all in classification. Those are all cubensis. They're all basically the same mushroom, with just mutations and different morphologies. So they grow looking differently, but
So
there
you have a
is
new one.
nuances in those different alkalines in those that will definitely hit you harder or more gently. Or
Do you taste them to know, or is there like different like things you could drop them in and the water changes purple? Or something?
there's definitely reactive testing, and then like you can but there's more and more psilocybin labs that you can send to. People are doing more lab testing that are sort of underground and safe, that you don't have to worry about like getting raided for sending a test strip.
But do you taste everything to?
I personally will microdose different varieties once like they've come through for sure. But no, I'm not like ripping through.
I know. I was curious because I was
asking,
thinking like if you have the different ones, like what are standard things you look for? What variables do you look to be
With the
elevated
crosses, it's
or
pretty much
compressed depending on
they're
the
more
strain?
consistent. And at this point with like the cubensi varieties, or like what else, I'm just changing different morphologies. I like how they look when they're growing. If I want them a little stubby and like more penis looking, or like big and open sort of huge caps, or dark spores or albino spores, or there's a bunch of actual physical traits that I kind of look for and play with a lot of times. And in that, because you're working from spore, and a lot of times I'm working with a wild variety that's or landrace that just came from the woods, the potencies tend to be a little bit higher than like the average golden teacher that's been handed around for the past 20 years and like people are getting from mail order catalogs a while ago.
Gotcha.
Knowing how smart the Mycelium network is there do either of you believe that there's a possibility that they're not from this planet? I've read some deep rabbit hole stuff since I met you that feel like Mycelium's
There's
landed
a lot of
here.
rabbit holes
Like,
you could go down.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always that theory that spores came from space because like they can withstand the vacuum of space.
right.
And in theory, like lichen or like moss that grows on rocks is sort of a symbiotic relationship between bacteria and different fungal masses. So like, and that's what ate rocks. That could be in theory what started eating the earth and creating life. So yeah, it could be. They could be from.
like
Another interesting thing is that fungi is its own kingdom. There's like animals, plants, and fungi precedes both other kingdoms by like 1 billion years.
Really?
Yeah.
They're older than wow.
I don't know the date, but it wasn't that long ago that we still thought that mushrooms were like a vegetable or a plant. So
I grew up thinking it was a vegetable.
We're
Honestly,
still in the early days, early stages. College has been studying mycelium and fungi for a while, but like still like getting away from it being a plant has been fairly new in the study.
Should I plug Entangled Life again?
yeah. Oh yeah. Merlin.
So for people listening, actually this is great because he just released, Merlin Sheldrake is this mycologist who wrote a great book called Entangled Life, which is like one of my favorite books I've ever read in my entire life. But he just released the illustrated edition.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh.
And so it's like really high quality photography and charts and graphs and like this visual explanation.
It's gonna be 10x
Really
better.
cool pictures.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's stunning.
Especially with like understanding mycelium and how it works. Like you really need some illustrations or like representations. I think it's hard to like fundamentally grasp it by just saying like concepts or thoughts. It's like the illustrations really help show like, oh, it's like a network. Like, these are all like nodes in a network.
Yeah, sometimes it's actually unreal. Like you imagine it and you see the picture and you're like, oh shit, it's like, I can't believe that's a natural like occurring thing. Or some of the petri dishes, like it's crazy that this is how it grows. Like, and then I'll see the same sort of mycelium growth in the woods, and like that's where it's pretty mind blowing.
Do you find that when you talk to the mushrooms, and being very serious here, that they actually, I know you believe they listen, but do you think they grow differently?
I think that, yeah, definitely. Like it, just like any sort of study with plants or animals or humans, if you give it positive energy or you're talking to it in a nicer way, it's gonna kind of grow in a nicer way, or like have more positive energy to be more do what it's supposed to do. I mean, one of the things I always say to you guys is like, I won't work in my lab or produce anything if I'm like really grumpy or in a bad mood, because I don't want to push my bad energy or bad like feelings onto the mycelium network, or like the even with my plants. Like if my cactus or something and like I'm in a really shitty mood, I'll put it off for the day, like as long as they're not going to die. But I don't want to like put my bad vibes into some other living thing that isn't necessarily.
If we all treated our Twitter like this,
Wow.
we would be in much
for
better
real.
shape, right?
A lot of you people out there on the Bird app
Me.
could really use some of this advice.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it might not be the nicest thing, but it's
Deez,
kind
you're a great example of somebody.
it's kind of funny, and like it's gonna get a lot of engagement, and maybe I don't want to deal with all the engagement it's gonna get, but like I'm gonna send it, and then it's like,
And then
maybe I
just like it's out there.
and then like an hour later, I'm like, I'm actually just gonna delete it.
I
I'm
delete
just
so many tweets. It's ridiculous.
Benny quits the space once a day.
Yeah,
How
a few
often
times a
when
day.
you're talking to Benny has he quit the space?
All right, let's not talk about
many
it.
times.
We have guests here, okay? When Dave Krugman strain?
Do you have a
When
name?
Dave Krugman strain?
Oh, make them a new variety?
Yeah, I want to be called the Dave Krugman strain.
We can make
DKS.
something for sure. I'm into it.
I think that that's important. I think that if we do
I
that,
already have my own strain. Penis envy.
Albino or just normal?
Just normal.
yeah,
I just love how
normal.
albino. It's like, oh no, this is ape, and you're like, oh, what's ape stand for?
I will
yeah.
never
That's-
forget. I took Alien out to some of my friends to meet him, and he comes to their house, and they're like, yeah, I want to do some shrooms. He's like, okay. He's like, I got a great strain. I'm gonna do it because I don't need yours. I have my own. And he pulls out this little mushroom. I swear to God, he said, this is my penis envy. You know, it's like this shroom like this big. And then he pulls out his penis envy. I mean, this is why it's named that. And it was like this big. And you should have seen
Baseball bat.
you should have seen the guy's face. He's like, yo, wait, what is that? He's like, well, this is penis envy. And the guy had major penis envy. And he's like, well, I guess I'm gonna try your stuff.
It's penis envy.
Penis envy. And like, you know,
The
but
acronym for that's P.
P is actually
Are these strains like? I'm somebody who's a little ignorant on the history of them. Like when I think of like weed strains, I think of like, you know, classic weed strains. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, there's like sour diesel. Like,
Totally.
is it similar with mushrooms?
I mean, same, but very different.
And then is
Yeah.
it?
Like,
I guess for me, the effects of them, I've only probably had like 5 different strains, but I have noticed visual effects difference. Like 1 gram on the strain I had that had ghost in the name was
Totally.
way different than 1 gram of Golden Teachers. And like the ghost one made, you know, the wall kind of start shifting and changing, whereas like the other one felt like my body was like decomposing, but less
definitely, again,
visual.
like, yeah, there's like the nuances in the alkalines and the different potencies and like how they're crossed. You'll get sort of slightly different experiences, I guess.
Do you find that your experiences, like when you explain what something does and then you give it to someone else, that it's like reproducible, or do you think it's like more different with people? Because I feel
usually
like
I give them like a range because again, like, yeah, every experience depending on every human's different. So every experience is going to be different. And like, it really does depend on your mindset, you know, if you're in a really crazy mindset, like it's going to bring out whatever you're really deep down, your subconscious is kind of dwelling on. It's going to make you sit with that sort of,
and you can't run from
potentially
it.
make you sit with that feeling, you know.
You have to be like okay being uncomfortable. Like I really caution
There is going to be
people.
a lot of few uncomfortable moments for sure. Even with the low doses, sometimes you're going to have that slight fight or flight that it's just going to let you know it's there. But
Yeah, the
yeah,
strain
that's just being
differences.
human too.
I haven't explored enough. Like with weed, I know how certain strains affect me. It's like, okay, I really want Skittles.
Yeah, I think for
really want.
for microdosing, I'm noticing that a little bit more since you started giving me different stuff. I mean, to be honest, I actually, I mean, I'll say because, you know, Dave was honest, but like I started doing it because I had just stopped taking meds that I was taking for almost 20 years
What meds, if you don't mind sharing?
for bipolar.
Okay.
And it was right before I stopped basically during COVID, and it was after COVID. I heard you had met Dave and Sam, who were both into the mycelium world,
The healing.
and they you know, they were both at, you know, like, oh, you should try this. And I was at the time, I don't know if you even know this, I was thinking about going back on my meds, and I really didn't want to because I hated how I felt after a little while, like on them. And then I started doing, you know, mushrooms and mostly what Alien gave me. So for me, microdosing has become a way to balance in the very chaotic life I have that people don't totally understand, that I have at least some semblance of not having to worry about that dark feeling place I get of like, you know, what I had beforehand.
I feel like the microdosing, when Dave was talking about helping with the depression,
Yeah.
it kind of like makes gravity feel a little lighter, and it makes
Yeah.
you, at least it makes me, able to externalize my being or my soul from my thoughts.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, well, like those are some bad thoughts and I felt like I was in a bad place, but it isn't who I am. It's just like a part of me that I can deal with. But then I don't know. It's hard to explain, but like
So,
when you were saying with the depression in particular, I had lost a really good friend and was really just distraught about it. And like the mushrooms felt like it kind of helped me go through the grieving process and like get to acceptance.
I totally agree.
Without really like, it kind of like let me like externalize myself from my thoughts.
What's cool about psilocybin in particular too is that it encourages neurogenesis and like neuroplasticity. And so one of the issues with our brains is that like a good way to think about this is like, if you're like, think about like sledding, like if you get caught in ruts and like the more you go down the same mental path, like the stronger that grip is on you. So like you just keep going deeper and deeper and all of a sudden you're in a canyon. And like the idea of thinking about something differently is, almost impossible. You're like looking up, you're like, there's no way I can get out of this rut of thought. But what psilocybin can do is like, it's like a Zamboni comes along and like smooths all of those ruts out. And it allows you to just be like, oh, actually, I never thought about it this way. And like start to build new pathways in your mind. And like, I'm not just like speculating, like this is the science of psilocybin. Yeah. So like, I think what it helps humans do is like see things from a different perspective while also allowing for the neuroplasticity of your brain to increase so that you can actually change your mind. And isn't that what Michael Pollan's book is called? Change Your Mind? Or
I think there is one. Yeah.
I'm definitely my opinions are very loosely held, but like they're even more loose with the use of mushrooms. It's like, oh yeah, I could like totally just be completely wrong. And like,
so I can't say as poetic or scientific as either of you, but the way I feel about it is like this. Ready? The movie, not Spider-Man, the other guy.
Batman?
No, he's like arch enemy. Venom. I feel with on Mycelium, this thing that is like this inside me.
Yeah.
You know how like he comes to the side and I can have a conversation with him versus the other way where it's like I hear something, I'm like, I don't fully understand what the fuck is going on. And for me, Mycelium gives me this ability to be like two separate things and at the same thing at the same time that allows me to get through my day. So it's like, okay, I got to do this, and this. But I have this like at least part of me that instead of on top of it having to worry about whatever else is bogging me down inside, I have this other thing that's becomes almost helpful and it gives me perspective. And even if it's still there and I can't get rid of it, it's still part of me. But Mycelium kind of makes me feel comfortable with that situation when I microdose more than anything.
More than the medical
100%. Like when I was taking the medical, and it definitely helped me, but it also like, my wife will tell you, she's like, you weren't always the same person, like you were you have your highs and lows. I like my highs, right? I don't want to always be in my lows. I like being in my highs. Right? You could see from my Twitter and usually what I do.
This is how we build.
So like to me, like those things are super important. And especially when I had kids, I want to be that like fun, energetic person and not always have to wallow in what brings me down because there's a lot, but instead be on a level where I could have it with me at all times, but feel that level, right, that it gives you.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, there's the other medication. There's definitely places for people. Like some people need that stuff, and it is.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm anti-drug.
It's usable for a lot of people, and it's great.
But sometimes it doesn't work.
Psilocybin isn't the answer-all pill, but with that and the willingness to like want to make yourself have a better change and want to do something, it can help you be a better human. I think it helps us connect with like the reality of us in this consciousness and like being in this 2-dimensional like or 3-dimensional world, and like it's definitely a tool that we can use. The analogy, like the skating, I think it's Michael Pollan used another one where it's a skiing analogy. It's very similar. Like you're going down and like the pathways, you're kind of stuck in these ruts. It's pulling you back and forth. and then they, groom the mountain, and now you can like have brand new like turns and smooth pathways
Yeah,
to
that's
like
such a good analogy.
create fresh tracks. And as long as you're willing to put in that effort and like, you want to make fresh tracks, it's going to help you get there.
It sounds like a relationship also.
You gotta like want it though too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to put in the work. Like if you're gonna, if you're going into this expecting, or going to anything, I guess, expecting to get something out of nothing, then like it's kind of a lost cause, I guess.
Well, I feel like that goes back to what you were saying, where you might just have to deal with things that you weren't ready for. Like you bottled it up, you weren't ready for it. You go into it.
Sometimes people take it recreationally, wanting to just have a good time, and they'll end up having a good old cry and like sit with themselves and go through something that needed to come out, and without
too many
planning
times
it,
for me.
still had a little bit of a healing moment. It's not always like the most ideal situation, but
no, normally, I have a strict, like I can't take more than a half gram when around other people, or we're gonna be doing
that's
something.
because
I've accidentally
rule.
put myself in bad situations where it's like
yeah.
you're in almost like looking back, it's good experience, but going through it was not a good experience.
Yeah, when I was much younger, like in high school, basically, like I feel like people encounter mushrooms the way you described, where like someone's like, "Yeah, you like
You
these are
wanna see color
mushrooms. You
shit?
eat an eighth, like
Eat
you
this
eat
whole bag.
3.5
Yeah.
grams." And so like, I've eaten a full eighth of mushrooms when I was like super young, and I had such a terrifying experience that I swore it off for 10 years. I didn't touch it because I was like, I don't
fuck
like
that.
that.
Fuck
Like that was not fun.
That was scary.
But it wasn't until I started to like treat it more responsibly and actually treat it as a medicine as opposed to like a drug, that I realized like how powerful this stuff is, and like how like important it is to use it that way and not just be like, just eat a fistful of mushrooms.
There's a
and see
skill
God.
gap. Like it's like a skill gap on it. Like I would say weed is a pretty low skill cap drug. Alcohol, maybe same skill cap as weed, maybe a little higher depending on your tolerance and how hard you go. But with mushrooms, it's like the dosage between 0.2 and 0.5 is a different experience.
Yeah.
Difference between 0.5 and 0.75. And then you have to know how you are calibrated versus every other. But like you could eat more than I can eat. And
Probably not, but yeah.
yeah, like
and you have to eat some food. Make sure you have some food, or if you
I
have
had
an
a
empty
friend,
stomach, you're gonna blast
really
off.
good friend. He's really tall. He's like 6'6", and I, start him out with a 1/4 gram, doesn't do anything. 1/2 gram doesn't do anything. He had to end up eating 4 grams to get what I was trying to explain to him. I felt at 1, and it's like, does that? He had to work up to it. I never wanted to be like, dude, you need to eat 4 grams. Like that
Right.
would have that could have been
Right.
horrible.
Right.
But since he worked up to it, it was like, okay, like that. I guess other people have
And again,
different.
like everybody's perception is, you can't, like, who knows what he's experiencing.
But you
too,
have to
in
be
comparison
like,
to,
like
yeah.
you said, like you have to be thoughtful about it, treat it as medicine, take the dosage seriously, and not just like, I'm gonna throw a handful in and just see what happens, because that's where you.
Yeah, I mean, like if you like living, recklessly, then like good for you.
No.
But like I think giving yourself a nice little plan is probably the best case scenario to not.
And then you also have to have a plan for like, okay, what am I gonna do for the next 4-ish hours that I'm under the influence? Like, do I have drinks? Do I have
Set
music?
yourself up a nice
Am
little.
I
like,
in a good
This is why I like
environment?
microdosing, because you could do that and then just do anything.
See, like
Yeah.
Well, yeah, for me, like the microdosing is kind of like, it's like all the good parts of Adderall without any of the bad parts of Adderall. Like I can't take Adderall because
Yeah.
I get so incredibly depressed
Yeah, totally.
after.
On the crash, yeah.
On the crash, like the B state of Adderall is like not survivable for me.
And like the topic I bring up all the time is the unwanted effects, or like they use the term side effects of like these drugs, where it's actually just like another effect of the drug. It's just an unwanted effect that they it's just the side effect.
Yeah.
Whereas with psilocybin, there really isn't any side effect other than like your brain's
have
probably
great
gonna
sex.
benefit from it. Yeah, like it's like
That's a good effect.
Well, yeah, I feel like if I'm in the right mindset for a microdose, like I'm more eloquent, I'm more organized, I can think 5 steps further ahead. I can
Do you play chess better when you're on microdose? 'Cause you're a great chess player.
I don't know, actually. I've never thought about that one, but when I'm on like a podcast or a Twitter Spaces, I find that if I'm on a microdose, like my own token prediction for like words in my head, my vocabulary is like 10x'd. And I can really,
Same with
You can
photography?
probably tell right now I'm not.
Is that like
Same with photography though?
Yeah, photography is like, yeah, it's just, I just can see more detail, and I'm just more present, and I can just explain things in my mind better.
do you think mushroom vision is a thing? Like,
What's up?
do you think mushroom vision is a thing? Like when you're on a certain microdose going maybe up to like the 1 gram point, I feel like, and I don't know if it's because I'm blind when I don't have my glasses on, and maybe it shifts and I'm not wearing my glasses, but I feel like I get like a higher fidelity.
Oh yeah,
Or-
everything's crisp.
Like I get like a different like that red circle with the white line or the yellow lines, like that would be popping.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it's 100%
contrast
true.
would be
Like the sky is bluer.
It enhances all your perceptions, in my opinion. So like, I love like cooking when I'm on a microdose. Like I like eating. Like some people say that they don't have an appetite, and I'm like, dude, it's like I get the munchies. Like I'm ready to go.
I get some munchies
It's a
also.
sensory enhancement
Yeah.
for me.
But you lose the munchies at like the 1 gram plus
Oh,
point. You're like,
definitely.
okay, but like
Yeah,
like
that's when food becomes like funny and
Yeah, you're like,
interesting.
what?
Yeah,
Like,
this
I
like
put this in my mouth.
Yeah.
This was living. Like when you look at the meat, dude. Oh, I've had some times where I'm like, why did I order a burger on this dose? Like this just ruined my whole vibe. Like,
don't go to Costco.
no, oh my god. You're looking at the
So-
cases of meat. I gotta ask,
Blow your mind.
how did you start blending photography with mycology? Were you a photographer beforehand? And just
I mean, I would
creating
say that
for-
I'm like an Instagram iPhone photographer as far as documenting my culinary journeys, like in the past. I've always liked to take, as like I said before, like it's temporary art or like disposable art. So like I got good at taking like nice angles with my phone so that I could preserve some of this things that I've
Yes.
been making and throwing at people. So like from there, when I was making all the mushrooms, it's sort of the similar path or like an organic pathway of like, of course I'm going to try to document this. And I found certain angles or like my style of taking these pictures. And again, like they make it really easy for me. Super pretty stuff. Like, but yeah, it seemed like an organic, of course I'm going to take some pictures of this stuff.
And then what made you decide, like, okay, now I'm gonna like mint them? Because I feel like you probably took a lot of pictures before you.
I mean, I'm still hesitant. I have collections that are ready to go, and like, it's once I'm hanging out with Dave a lot more, and I've kind of spent almost a year hanging in the Web3 community and going to a lot of events and a lot of galleries, and always wanting to be more of a artist rather than anything. It just again made sense to kind of like use this as my current art pieces as I can grow and build my style using biological ingredients. Like I want to start growing plants and other things in fun ways, but yeah, I like the idea of the collaboration between me and another living thing that's other than a human, and then documenting it with photography, whether it's time lapsed or still life.
I think the question everybody wants to know is, have you seen each other naked, and is it true about Dave?
Stop.
That's the number one question we've gotten when we announced that we were doing this pod.
Oh yeah, it was all your
Benny, that was Benny's first question.
Yeah.
That's
1,000 people ask that same question.
Benny.
No,
Benny
but I would say
always
like your
throws a
connection,
curveball
yeah.
in.
But your connection with Dave, I think has grown, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I really do have Dave to thank for bringing me into this world. Again, like I was kind of hanging out in the art world, the culinary world, and starting my mycelial journey, if you will, of growing and creating products and creating art kind of on my side, and then bumped into Dave, and he introduced me to the whole Web3 crypto art world, and it's been very nice and very like eye-opening and accepting, and allowing me to become a said artist with these
And we can't name the names
tools.
here, but I would say like almost every big account and artist in our community probably gets a product from you at this point.
Yeah,
Almost.
I already have some really great collectors. both of you guys have some of my work, and like the other
I had
people
to fight beer, Nathan.
Yeah,
One
it was a
piece, I was
nice
like,
little
damn, like
bidding war that made me feel good.
he went 420.69 to me. I was like, fuck, like it's his. Like I gotta go for another one.
But yeah, I've had contact with a lot of big time players in the space, and I'm really appreciative of that as well. And then sort of I've built my network already of really amazing people, and I've come into contact with really talented and creative and fun people. Like I haven't met a person yet that I'm really like, wow, like I was like super slimy. I don't want to.
Yeah, and I think Dave, like back in the day, like artists, like I mean, like we were talking about Toulouse-Lautrec before. I mean, but they would do, like most artists are doing absinthe or cocaine or some sort of drug that was giving them inspiration, creativity, like for more creativity, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a like good like I think there's a myth around like drugs and creativity that like all art comes from this like drug induced state. Don't think that's true. I just think it's like, you know, human beings in general like sometimes exploring altered states of consciousness, and it makes sense that artists do too. Like I don't think Bukowski was a great poet because he was an alcoholic. I think he was a great poet despite the fact that he was an alcoholic. There's, you know, it's kind of similar to the myth of the starving artist. Like you don't need to suffer like that in some like intense financial deprivation to be a good artist. Life is a very difficult thing, and it will throw problems at you at every corner. You're going to have to deal with emotional turmoil, heartbreak. You're going to have to deal with, you know, grief, challenges. You know, we all lose people, and there's enough to make art about without inducing suffering in yourself. So like, I want to just be clear to artists out there, like this idea that there's some sort of either enhancement through drugs that you need, or that there's some internal struggle and suffering that you need in order for art to blossom, is both of those are completely untrue.
Yeah, you can be sober and happy and make some really beautiful things.
I make my best work when I'm happy and grounded. I do not make my best work when I'm depressed or suffering. And one of my biggest challenges is just getting to a spot where like I'm a functional human, so that I can like do cool things and have all the crazy ideas that I have. I can actually execute on them, because when I'm depressed or when something's going terribly wrong in my life, I'm incapable of like executing on those ideas.
Which is interesting because rain usually connotates being sad, and you love the rain.
Yeah, but I don't think rain and sadness are related.
Well, it's the same idea as like, yeah,
it's another myth. It's like,
right.
No, dude, rain is you know, I wrote a poem one time. I think I said it on the last podcast, but it's like, she called and asked me, how you doing, love? I said, I'm maintaining. You know, I've been feeling low, but you don't grow if it ain't raining. And that to me is like, that's why I love the rain. Is like, rain is one of the reasons we have life at all. Like water is like the absolute giver of life. So I love the rain.
Yeah, in small villages, it's like rejoiced. Like,
yeah.
Well, it's
fertility.
like, you know, the cloud is full and it has to empty itself. Like the rain is a lot like emotions or things you feel, and you empty it out, and then it allows you to suck up more things and experience more.
It's a circle of life. As we're talking about life, you both live in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know that you have a love for Brooklyn, both of you.
Yeah, New York City in general, but yeah, Brooklyn's an incredible place.
What's it about the city that I guess it kind of connects to this? I mean, I've heard Dave talk about it. It's its own kind of living mycelium organism.
You tend to compare
everything
to this
So
network.
I think there's something beautiful about that I've heard you both talk about before. So
for me, it's you know, I think all the most interesting things happen at the collision of different people's stories. And I just think New York is one of the best environments for those collisions to occur. And like, let's say that like 1 in every 100 random interactions between people leads to some sort of beauty or magic. There's just more collisions here, and there's more international collisions here, and there's more diversity and acceptance here than I think probably in any other city in the world. And so there's something about that particular recipe that I think leads to some really, really incredible interactions between humans. And as a street photographer, like that's what I study. I study like interactions between people and their environment. And I just can't imagine being anywhere else. Everywhere I go feels like some watered down version of the city experience. And I think it has a lot to do with, you know, the history of Manhattan. I think I've recommended this book on the podcast before, but The Island at the Center of the World, incredible book, but also the geography. I mean, it's because Manhattan is an island, like it forces density. It forces people to be living, you know, amongst each other. And it feels like a village in that way, in a way that I think in modern society, especially in like suburbia and just the way that people live nowadays, and there's so much isolation out there. And like New York, you can't really ever be isolated. And I like that fact that you're just in the mix all the time.
Yeah. I feel like that was a lot like Rooftops of his series. Jeremy Cohen's series, like how like we were all closed off, but yet everybody was on the rooftops, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're in everybody's business. And I love that you said that, like, you know, you meet 100 people and then one story you connect to. But what's I find about the city, and go back to the idea, like it's all connected, is like you're connecting to that one story. But I find that living through, like, especially this group in New York, is that story somehow connects to another story, connects to another story, connects to it comes all the way back around and connects back to that original story. And like how like everything is really connected in the city in a lot of ways. And I find that to be like, you know, to me, that's the most like, you know, poetic part about all of it.
I think another really cool thing about New York is like, you know, we have a reputation like, oh, like, you know, New Yorkers can be mean or something like that. And I was like, it's just so not true. Like, I think that forced proximity is like, you know, New Yorkers have each other's backs most of the time. And I think it's really cool. And I think it has to do with the fact that we have to share such space together.
I'm just busy and like trying not to deal with anybody else's bullshit.
Yeah.
So.
I like the honesty of New Yorkers. Like you
There's
take
no
people in
time to be
LA and
wasted.
New Yorkers, and it's just a different spectrum. But like New Yorkers, they tell you what they think. Like Benny is a great example. Like, he's always never afraid to say like, doesn't matter if it's.
Well, that's not true. Sometimes my tweets get edited by
No,
Dave.
but not your tweets, but just like being in person.
Sometimes they
It's
don't.
just damage
Sometimes they
control.
don't, and then it's after he's like, "Yeah, that one you shouldn't have put out there." But
But it's just like New Yorkers are honest people. Like I feel like
Time is the most valuable thing in my mind, and
Yeah.
like money is money, whatever. But like, especially like if you want to show somebody you care about them, like you spend time with them, because that's literally you're giving part of the most valuable thing to them. So like, there's no time to bullshit. Like we
There's
don't
really-
need to be wasting that most valuable time by like
when in New York, your
dancing
time's
around
even
it.
more valuable because you could bump into 99 other people in the next 30
100%.
minutes.
Yeah, with the New York thing, and like again to bring it back to the network, sort of, and mycelium comparisons. When you're growing any sort of fungi, like when you're starting it, you want to try to make as many inoculation points as possible, or in that networking, so that it spreads as fast as possible and kind of consumes whatever you're trying to grow in. And like being in New York, it's sort of impossible to not make a bunch of networking connection inoculation points, you know, where we're bumping into somebody, you have a connection, then they meet somebody else has a connection, and that just spreads. Like so like we'll throw, you know, say an Allships party, and you meet 150 200 people right there, and like that network booms into 300, then thousands of people within the next day, and like it's just inherent.
That's your whole circle thing, right?
And it brings it-
Dave's
brings it
thought out.
back.
Dave has the circle.
Yeah.
And we should talk a little bit about Allships, because I think you guys do some of the best community curation in the
Thank you.
space. You know, I always say like vibes are multiplicative, and if you have 1 0 in the vibrational equation, then your product is a 0, regardless of what every other vibe is. And I feel like at all of your events, it's one of the best events I go to. It's like yours and Schiller's are the two where I show up and I can just know that everybody there is going to be somebody who like down to earth, good vibes. It like should be there. Like I can let my guard down pretty much completely. And like, we should talk a little bit about how you two work together. I know like now you've done so like the Miami joint with the oysters, by the way.
That was so fire.
It worked out so well.
That the story behind that was so good, but
Yeah, that was
also
a very
just
lucky- good vibes
Well,
moment.
well, I think and I'll let Dave answer after this, but what I think is so great about these events and now working with Alien is that Dave understands vibes so well on so many levels. It's like, okay, it's not just about the venue, right? Your attention to detail. It's also about the matchbook and the food and and like everything makes a difference in order to make the whole event have like this great feeling. And I've never met anybody who's left an Allships event and been like, no, it was okay. Everybody who goes, they come back like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. Like, they
about
have
the
that feeling.
hospitality, yeah.
And I think that's the connection with not just Alien, but, you know, Ollie Channon and others like that you bring to that table to really make it all kind of connect. But I think that's also from your experiences that you've had so many years and all these stories I've heard.
Yeah. So, I mean, it all starts with my mom. So my mom's also a chef. I grew up in the kitchen with her, cooking every day, family dinner every night. And then like, you know, once a month or something, or at big family events, like we have everybody over the house and we're both cooking. And I just developed this love for bringing people together. And that definitely comes from my mother. So, you know, bringing people together around food, I think is like the best way to build community. And when I met Alien and understood that he, you know, had his particular skill set and his resume and the places that he's worked are some of the most, you know, incredible places in the city, I was like, oh, we can totally form a symbiosis between the two of us. And so I asked him if he would be the head of dining for Allships. And he's taken our food program and our planning just like to new stratospheric heights. And so, you know, our holiday party that we just did, we just had like 200 people come through Roberta's Pizza, where, you know, Alien has a long history there. And we did a whole pig roast. We did, they had fresh baked bread, and like they had an Argentine grill with vegetables and soup and squash. And like, you know, we paid for everybody to just eat, and just, you know, open bar for everyone as like a little thank you to the community for having a great year. And, you know, people leave those experiences being like, this is how people should be spending their time. Like work and all the stress we put up with every day and all the effort we put into like, you know, making a living just so we can, you know, survive this crazy life that we're all in. Like, that has to be for something. And for me, that's like to be in warm rooms with warm people, you know, surrounded by that vibration and energy of love and just camaraderie. And so that's my goal with Allships. And I mean, I think this is going to be our biggest year yet. Alien and I have like incredible plans.
Oh, create a tease. This will come out in like 2 months.
I mean, we're just really going to formalize like the dining club. We're going to do a series of drops that incorporate, you know, some of the best restaurants in the city, and just really like use the Web3 as a way to engage with culture in a way that just hasn't been done before in the space. Like, I feel like culture is always something people use in Web3 as like a marketing term. And we want to flip the script on that completely and be like, no, we're a culture. Allships is a culture company, and Web3 is just part of the way Web3 is just part of our tooling. It's not at all just like, oh, we're a Web3 company that does cool cultural stuff. We're a culture company that does stuff with Web3 sometimes. And I think just really quick about Allships one more time is like, I will use more Web3 technologies in the future with Allships, but part of the reason the vibe is so good is like, it's vibe gated. It's not token gated. Like anybody can come to these parties. Like, I post them online. I let anybody show up. And what that does is it attracts the type of person who wants to be there. It doesn't attract people who are motivated by, you know, some like a proof pass, for example. Like, it's not some asset that you're interested in the community because of the value of some token you hold. You're interested in the community because of the value of the relationships that community can contain for you. And so Allships as a cultural container is something that I'm really, really interested in. Like, that's why, you know, we have like merch, and like, we're going to have a much bigger line of all this stuff coming out, and like, you know, all sorts of like editorial coverage and just experiential stuff. Because that's just really what I want to do. Like, I'm fully dedicated to Allships as like being the vessel for all of my ideas forever.
And they were taking some of that also Dave and I, and it was really inspired a lot by Allships and what Dave's did. Dave's co-hosting with me this show that we're gonna do by traveling and taking that on the road with artists.
When's the first? Do you have an episode planned?
March. Yeah, we have a bunch coming up.
Nice.
Yeah, we're gonna.
When will be the first time we'll be able to see it? Like summer?
No, like June, July.
Summer.
Yeah, maybe June.
July.
Yeah. So when we'll talk about Roberta's. I gotta talk about this pig roast and this Argentinian grill. Like we can't just glance over this. Did you plan I guess my first question is, what's the backstory with Roberta's? Did you used to work there, or how do you know the restaurant?
Yeah, I used to. I was a pastry chef of Roberta's, and then they have a 2 Michelin star restaurant connected to it in the back.
Okay.
So I was part of like the core crew and pastry chef and part of chef of the restaurant for a few years on and off as we were transitioning through.
And was it your idea to do this pig roast? Like how did this happen?
No, I mean, like there's some really amazing chefs that work in the Roberta's team crew, and the head chef of the East Coast branch mentioned it to Dave at one point. Was like, look, I want to do a lamb, a pig, or a goat, and we went with the pig idea. And I mean, as much as I wanted to take credit for that, I kind of showed up and the dude was crushing already. It was like split.
How much
and
does
roasted.
one
But just to be
pig-
clear, Alien is like I couldn't arrange this stuff.
Yeah.
Because he knows the language, and
Yeah, no,
the
it's
chef,
nice.
the chef and I were talking, and one of the owners of Roberta's was just like, "Dude, let's do something crazy," and I was like, "Yo, like I got budget, let's throw down."
Yeah.
And so we did our annual Christmas party, and basically that's when I step away, and I'm just like, Alien,
They got it.
make it happen, and
They
he like, then I get to show up and everything's done. It's amazing. Like,
Yeah,
How much does one pig feed? Like how many people would that feed?
I think that one was like for like set out like 50 people.
That's
I think,
crazy.
40 people, yeah, ish.
I think
mean, with sides and
but I
bread
told them
and-
to serve it light so that more people could eat, and I think we fed like 70, 80 people that night.
Yeah, there was.
God bless
there was
that
a lot
pig.
of
If we
food.
were
It
on
was great.
if we were on a stranded island, would you be able to hunt for the pig as well?
Yeah, if I had to.
We would be foraging. We wouldn't be hunting.
Yeah, if I had to. Way
I
back
feel like
in
you
my
would be
culinary
great
career,
during a zombie apocalypse.
I feel like I would be great. I always say that if the power went off, I'd be very sought after because like I would do good stuff.
You should live closer to me.
I got a tunnel.
I got seeds.
Yeah, we got
saved.
tunnels. I can build a tunnel too. Yeah.
I'm into that.
Yeah.
The zombie apocalypse stuff is
Pneumatic. Shoot us there.
a whole conversation, but I feel adequately unprepared for any scenario.
Are there
where
zombie shrooms?
if
Yeah, I mean, as far as-
Cordyceps.
Yeah, cordyceps are kind of a parasitic mushroom that's it takes over the bodies of insects and forces them to bite into go very high up and bite into like a tree, and then so it'll grow out of their head and spread.
No
its
way.
spores.
Yeah, you haven't seen Planet Earth, dude? You gotta watch Planet Earth, Ben.
Yeah.
Or like Fantastic Fungi. There's a few documentaries you really need to
Nobody
like.
said-
Fantastic Fungi is the one I saw.
You've never seen Fantastic Fungi?
No.
We gotta
Oh,
get
dude,
Ben.
It's
you're-
beautiful.
Yeah.
What-
Okay.
What's going on?
Sorry, well,
I feel like I failed you as a friend.
Nobody gave it to me.
Okay,
We gave
I'll
I'll
watch
make
it on the
up,
way down to Orlando.
We gave him Merlin's book, but we didn't give him
Yeah,
Fantastic Fungi.
exactly.
Yeah, we'll give you.
So
a
wait,
whole
is that
itinerary.
like the game in Last of Us?
It's based
Yeah,
on
it's
that.
Yeah.
exactly what it's based off of.
Benny thought Last of Us made that up.
In theory, the thing
Benny
would be
was
is
like,
the body temperature changes a few degrees, and it allows the mushroom spores to parasitize humans. And in theory, it's growing out of the head of the. I mean, I honestly, as much as I'm into mushrooms and stuff, I haven't watched Last of Us, and I didn't play the game, so
Oh, the game
I
is
don't
so
know the
good.
storyline
It's one of
that
the best
well.
games. Yeah.
you cry.
Did you watch the show?
Yeah.
It's all.
I
They
like
did a
the show
great.
too. I love the game more though. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's one of the only games I've ever played where I've been completely lost in. Like,
Yeah.
it's so immersive that it's actually terrifying. It's scarier than any movie you could watch because you're actually controlling the action.
I couldn't play it at night.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
I was too scared.
Like Resident Evil.
I couldn't play Resident Evil 4. I couldn't play at night, but then I got used to it. I can just play it all the time now.
One more thing about microdosing in video games is, dude, I'm 10 times better at Call of Duty if I'm microdosing.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Not high though. Like you're
I just have to be like microdosed.
okay. I play too many games high now, and it kills my reaction time. Like
No, but dude, a 1 micro in Call of Duty is like it's just unbelievable how accurate.
oh, dude, I will microdose, but then I'll smoke, and then I will play a first-person shooter, and then I have that like quarter second or tenth of a second brain lag, and I'm just like,
No,
14-year-olds just killing
I think
me.
being stoned like on with weed and playing video games is super fun,
but
it does not enhance your game.
But no.
Would you be a sniper if you were in like if you could go back into if you could
If
like
you were drafted
right
military,
now? Would you be a sniper? Would you be?
I would want to be a sniper because
Yeah.
I'm nice and far away from anyone else.
But you also have the eye because you're a photographer.
I'd be a
Yeah,
cook.
that makes the most sense for me. But the idea of harming another human is just completely
No,
foreign to me.
obviously we're.
If
you
I
know,
had to,
yeah.
I would definitely just be a cook and hide in the back and be like
my
making food and hiding from the war.
My friend's father got drafted to Vietnam and he didn't want to go, so he said instead he would go to the slaughterhouse. And now he's a vegetarian his whole life. He's like, that was the worst mistake. I should have gone to Vietnam instead. I would have been able to eat meat now. But
so he worked in a slaughterhouse as like
he
a
worked for
butcher?
slaughterhouse for like 3 years or something like that. Like for the army, like they had. their own
Oh, you could do that
slaughterhouses.
in the army.
Or-
I was deathly afraid of being drafted growing up. Like this
Really?
is like
Yeah.
a very real fear. Like I remember learning, I don't know, I'm in 6, that like, oh yeah, the government can just say like you're in the military and
snatch
then
you.
you're in the military. And I was
Wow.
like deathly afraid that something was gonna happen.
I mean, that's happening in Russia right now.
Yeah.
I was gonna get drafted, and like I'm not a fighter. I'm not
love her, bro.
athletic physically.
I would have shot myself in the leg or something.
But back then, you could just say you like
Yeah.
dudes almost.
You like what?
Yeah, you're
Like
sorry.
you used to back then. You could have just been like, "Yeah, I like dudes,"
Sorry,
and
I'm
they're like,
gay.
"All right, like we're not gonna put."
But
you
now
with-"
they can't say that anymore.
No, now they're like, "We you
don't
need
know.
to be in."
Maybe
But good, come.
Yeah, come, right, yeah. Good.
We got dudes.
We got dudes. We got plenty.
Yeah, dude, I don't know.
But did you have that feeling as a kid? You were nodding your head. I don't know if
No,
I was alone.
I
there.
was, but like, I don't think it ever occurred to me that like things would get that bad again. But
Yeah.
I can't imagine like for our parents' generation, like, you know, my father got a draft card for Vietnam. And like, luckily, like by just stroke of luck, it was a very high number. And so like, they never made it to him.
Oh, it's like RNG. Like you get a lottery ticket.
Yeah. It's a lottery.
But you
So,
don't
like,
want to win.
My dad got a lotto ticket, and he was living in New York, and he didn't want to go, so he moved to my cousins in Pennsylvania. And my grandmother was upset at him because he thought he was wasting his life there, and then he got engaged to a girl that she didn't like. So she told the draft place where he was living.
On her own son.
Yeah, and then he broke up with that girl, went to Vietnam, then married my mom.
Your grandma's.
She's hardcore, man. She's like, don't fuck around. Find out what happens.
It's like I don't like
You're
that
wasting
girl.
your life in Pennsylvania.
Get your ass to Vietnam.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. He talk about losing time. So my dad has early onset dementia. So now watching him and just as he forgets everything, which is tough. But I had him do a podcast with my daughter one day about a year ago, just to like record as much as we could. And he told that story to my daughter, and my daughter, who's 9, is like, I don't understand. Like, she was so confused about it. But talking about time is, I think, one of the most precious
Did
things.
recording the podcast together with your friends make you want to do it with your dad? Or-
Yeah, definitely got me more comfortable. I was like, oh, I'm going to try this. And also just in general, like for me, my life is, I mean, this podcast's not about me, but very quickly, like, you know, I had certain direction in my life. I didn't know what I was doing. I would say the artists, Dave especially, and this group of people like Alien and others, made me realize that my time is a lot shorter than I realized. So I wanted to take it more, you know, take whatever I can out of it now. I never had that feeling. Yeah, it's precious.
Not shorter.
Well, it's shorter in a way that
Sure,
I
guess,
thought
but-
sometimes I had all the time in the world, and now realizing I don't think I have, you know, the skills and the let's say, you know, that artists and creators have. But it gave me, you know, this relationships gave me the ability to want to try at least live my life to the fullest as I can while having a family and then bring them part of that. And I think we don't sometimes realize those things. And then we focus on, like Dave said, the things that sometimes don't matter, and realizing on the larger picture what does and what you could accomplish.
I thought about doing one with my parents, but I feel like I probably should try to do it with my grandparents. It's probably too. It feels like a weird ask, or like it feels
they're
like
just when I did it with my dad, I thought it would be also, but it was actually super nice. What inspired me was actually two things. It was us doing a podcast, and then I took a picture with Dave and his dad up in Great Barrington, of the two of them taking a picture of the moon. And it was a moment for me where it was just like, man, it's like, I have a son. I was like, these times, like, those two things together kind of made me realize, I think you just got to like go for it. But it was a nice moment. I have it now forever. And I don't know if, my daughter wants to watch it one day, or my grandkids. So,
I mean, I'm sure you'll want to watch it someday. Like that's
maybe
a great thing to have.
Yeah.
I feel like every year when I go back for Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever, it's like you see the passage of time more drastically because you're just updating what you saw last year, and you don't see like 364 days in between, and then it's like, wow, like that year hit like 5 years, like, and then it makes you appreciate the time that you get with them. Because
100%.
when I was growing up, like go to the nursing home, see great grandpa, like you watch that happen slowly, but you're so young it doesn't really hit because you're like, I don't know, I was like 6 to 12, and then he passes and you're like, okay, that's life.
Yeah.
But then like when you watch it with your grandparents, or at least for me, it's like, okay, now I'm in my late 20s, early 30s, and it's like I'm thinking about where I'll be in 30 years or 40 years or 50 years, and it hits way differently than when I was a kid. It's like, holy shit, like and then some things happen, like an accident happens in the family, or like you lose a friend, and then it's like your whole worldview gets shifted upside down. Like for me, it was like losing a really good friend in 2021 summer who was like 38. That's like, wait, that can happen? Like, holy shit. Like, it just makes you so much more appreciative of just like everything.
Yeah. Like I've gone through like a lot of different emotional turmoil things in the past few years. And like another thing about the psilocybin is like, it really puts things into perspective, where like that empathy I have, that I'm just like, even for people that I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh, this person has wronged me or in some way, or like this situation didn't work out the way I wanted it to. But just having that layer of just like empathy for everyone, and just like the sheer amazement and unlikelihood that we're even here at all, and like get to actually be a conscious being in this universe, just kind of shrinks all those problems so much. And I have to constantly remind myself to like zoom out and be like, I know this feels like the worst thing that could possibly happen right now, but in the grand scheme and like the grand arc of humanity and the universe, and like all the millions of things and people that had to live before me and survive in order for me to even get to experience this level of pain, it really does humble you.
There's a scene in I don't know if you remember this, Dave, in Gangs of New York. So there's this 3-hour movie. I always found this fascinating, and it's like intense. The whole movie's so fucking intense. It's like 3.5 hours long, and then the last scene is, which I find fascinating, is just the 2 tombstones, and in this like cemetery, and then it shows New York building behind it for like 150 years. And you're just like it just went from like all this intensity to just this. And then you kind of realize like, holy shit, like this was in a major story. They built the city and this and this. And they're just like this tiny little tombstones that just wore away. Why these giant skyscrapers were building. And it always like gave me this like, oh my God, like we are just like this like tiny little moment in time. And, especially now with what we're doing and trying to build a blockchain to make those moments last longer, even past us, I find to be like just it hits me every time I think about those things.
Another thing is, I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of like the catacombs below Paris, and like you just see like millions of bones, just stacks. And you're like, it's just so amazing. Like you look around the world and you're like, oh, this is what life is. But like thousands and thousands of years of people having like all the drama, like all the love, all the loss, all the chaos,
profound
and,
experiences.
Yeah, it's just like
ups and downs and like
Right.
all
the
of
time
things.
scale is just so astounding. And then like everyone you know is just another like blip on that long, long arc. And like think about people 100 years from now, like having the same conversation, being like, damn, like
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
Do you think those memories and those profound experiences like all connect though in a way to like our experiences that we're feeling now? Like somebody once told me that the reason why we get scared about what's under our bed is because there used to actually be animals under your bed. Right? I don't know if that's 100% true, but I get the idea. Like,
I think
and like,
there's definitely a possibility of like genetic sort of like trauma, if you will, like passed down through generations of like, you know, whatever happened to your said great grandfather.
but also good moments as well, I would assume.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, just as much as negative but positive, you're the genetic mutations, for lack of a better word, like will run down through generations and affect you from what happened before, for sure.
So it's might be a crazy
Animal
question
instinct.
then if that's the case, right? And shrooms are so old,
Right.
do they have their own memories that they remember things from like millions of years ago?
I mean, memory is a very interesting thing. I've been going down a memory rabbit hole lately. Like, where do we think human memory is stored? If it's stored in your brain, or if it's stored on sort of like a energy cloud, if you will. But mushrooms, I don't know. I'm sure there's like, yeah, maybe, who knows?
Energy cloud.
Yeah,
Like,
don't let me like get like distracted too much on that. But
Okay, no, I mean,
No, I'm curious.
There's like a whole debate about like, is consciousness, are we antennas for consciousness, or are we consciousness?
Oh,
like, are we just the machine that's running, and I'm just sort of like re-downloading sort of my memory from another whatever energy, and it's just like running sort of
so there's like a
human
central
apps
location.
from my like machine in this machine. Who knows where like
Is there a
that's,
set?
like, where is memory stored?
Is there a
That's, like,
central location, and we're just all taking from it, or we're all taking from each other, and like basically like,
like
a
we all
decentralized
have
network?
our own that we're pulling from, or it's all
I
one.
mean,
Guys, we don't know.
We don't. Okay.
Because I
everybody
feel
take
like the
mushrooms?
antenna thing is something like, it reminds me of like the simulation talk,
Yeah.
yeah.
where it's like if you have an antenna, I think in that reality, the simulation is more likely. Like you're getting it from a central source or like a central thing. Whereas if it is just in your head, it feels less likely because then it is.
I think it's much more complex than we can even ever comprehend, and us trying to like conceptualize it as humans has always been like fun.
Futile.
To,
It's
like,
the
it's
elephant.
a funny sort of. I think we all share the same experience and the same chemical makeup, and our atoms are all the same, and we're kind of all experiencing a very visual consciousness of said time and space. But like, where all of those memories and all those thoughts and all that energy we're creating now goes and comes back, I don't have an answer for you at that point. Like,
The shrooms.
sure,
It all goes back
it
to
helps
mushrooms.
us. Like,
I mean, maybe they're controlling us because they're aliens, like you.
I mean, it could just be like potentially keeping us happy so that we continue to breed, so that they have more food to eat at the end of the day.
I once saw a guy in the city, man. I forgot. I don't know if I ever told you this. Who I swear was an alien, and
Not
nobody
in
was.
Miami.
No, just in the city. I was at the bodega once, and I saw this guy, and he really looked human, but it looked like he was strange. Like there was something off with him.
If
and
they
he
were
was,
going to be hiding somewhere, like
No,
Men in
but-
Black definitely was like right.
Yeah,
They
were
would-
you,
Yeah.
they
are you
would
sure
be
you're just
hiding in
watching
New
the
York.
movie?
No,
Men in Black?
no. And here's the
He got
weird part.
zapped
Here's the
right
weird part.
after.
I was the only one. Like I was standing there. I'm looking at him. I looked around. Everybody was just minding their own business.
It's New York.
You didn't take
And
out your phone. You're like, anyone else see this shit?
No, I almost got a chill. Like I was like, it was such an awkward feeling that I just like froze, and then he left, and I was like, maybe like he just walks around and nobody notices, and like my antenna got messed up, and I saw him by accident, and it was such a strange
was watching
feeling.
that.
I've had numerous feelings like that. Not a ton, but
Do you
that's
think you were
happened.
ever abducted?
I thought for a while that I used to be abducted, to be honest with you, because in my sleep I used to have a hypnotic. I go in. So when I sleep, why I don't sleep as much is because my dreams are very intense. Because
Same, yeah.
I go straight to REM, so I don't. I pass all my levels very quickly. So I have these very intense, long dreams where I'm very tired after I wake up.
Yeah, it's
So
exhausting.
I used to, a lot of times I would get these dreams. When I was younger, I would have these feelings. It's so ridiculous. I don't want to talk about this. That I would wake up in the middle of the night, and my eyes would kind of open up a little bit, and I would feel that there was somebody else in the room with me. And I always thought, like, I didn't know if it was an alien or an angel or something. It was like a very weird feeling. And then as I got older and I went to
How old do you
sleep
think
study,
you were when this was happening?
that was like, I was young. I was like 7, 8 years old. And I used to tell my parents about it. They're like, oh, what are you talking about? You're such a retard. Oh, take that word out.
Nah.
Sorry, you're such a weirdo. But like, you know, and then I once I got, you know, I was with Amir, I kept saying like, no, I'm telling you, I get these, like, especially when I take naps, it happens. Like,
I think kids have higher,
That's
higher
very common. It's
consciousness.
sleep paralysis.
sleep paralysis, yeah. And then I found out, I was like,
Happens
oh,
to me all
that's
the time.
yeah. So that I don't really
We
think
have a
of
friend who thinks he was abducted by an alien.
who.
Guy.
Oh
think
yeah,
so?
I've heard that. I've heard he actually has a story. You didn't tell me that story. Somebody else did. I don't want to say on air, but told me that he believes that he like was fully abducted, right? Yeah.
I've never felt that, but
Yeah.
that also comes from a lot of psychedelic use. Like
Yeah.
that you're on a bunch of psychedelics. Like,
Anything's possible.
Yeah, anything's possible.
Anything.
I
It's
mean,
possible.
yeah, anyone can get abducted. Maybe that's why they're there for. When you share psychedelics with other people, what tips, like general tips, do you give people? You're somebody who's done every type, every way.
You know, I'm always a person of like a choose your own adventure, life's all about choices kind of thing, where I can give you guidance. I can't give you, I'm not going to give you any sort of rules, but I can sort of show you the direction. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. But like, you know, start slow. You can always go harder later, or eat more.
Yeah.
Set and setting, as corny as that is, like, you know, make sure you're comfortable and you're ready for whatever could happen, and you have a comfortable, safe place for yourself.
Preferably with somebody you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like that's important too.
I
having a
agree.
safe person for sure. If you feel the need to have like a quote unquote trip sitter, even with microdosing for the first time or whatever, just to make sure you're even more comfortable that nothing bad could happen to you. Yeah, just like setting yourself up in a proper way.
I think my favorite place for doing it is I do it in the float tanks.
It's probably
I've yet
dangerous
to
your
do
first
one.
time.
I've done,
I
so
really
I
wanna-
just did it this year for the first time. And
Yeah.
did I tell you I thought I opened a wormhole up?
I mean,
No.
that
I
yeah.
didn't tell you this, guys.
I'm so
But did
into that.
Fungi get you to do this? Because I think he talked
So
about
I love
this.
float tanks, and I think float tanks are
Wait,
like one of my
how long
favorite.
have you been using float tanks for? We've never talked about float
I really
tanks.
want to do it.
I've been doing it
Next time you go,
now
I'm
almost 6 years. I did it the first time with Amira, and she hated it so much. And then after that, I kind of just went when I have a chance to do it on my own. I've never
You go to
I-
a place, obviously.
Sensory deprivation is
sensory-
just so fascinating.
Yeah,
too, on its own.
one of my favorite movies growing up was this movie with John Hurt, where he goes into the float tank and becomes he de-evolves. I don't know if it's
Are
called.
float tanks Lindy? Like, have they been around for a while?
Yeah, they've been around for actually in the 70s. They were big in colleges. I think they were.
Okay,
doing
so
studies
it's
and stuff
relatively
like that,
new
yeah.
in human history. It's like
But there's like some that
two
are
generations.
natural that they built now that I really want to go to, in like some of these places that are amazing. The last time I did it and I took a microdose, I thought I opened a wormhole.
So how often do you do it, and why do you do that?
Not that often, like four times a year. 5
Only when
times
he
a
wants to open a wormhole.
year. Exactly.
Yeah.
I opened
Time
the wormhole
travel.
and then Dave came to me and he said, "Stay. You have so much more to do." And so I stayed. I didn't go through the wormhole.
What-
Thank you.
So you've been doing it for 6 years. What
Yeah.
impact does it have on you when you come out of it?
Um,
Because I don't think we've never talked about. I never knew he did.
For
float
me,
tanks.
I know this is new to me too.
for me, it really, when I really need to like, oh man, when I need to
Reset.
get quiet
Yeah.
Yeah,
and reset, which is really hard for me because I think that there's all I have is noise.
yeah. Oh, for sure.
So therefore, I need like this break. You know, mural. Say, hey, go to the float tank, and I'll go to the one in the like. You know, they're all over the place.
Yeah, go to
I would
one.
like to have one day, like just in my house, but I need a hot tub first. But
Priorities.
But I think a hot tub, probably why I like a hot tub so much is because it
Reminds
feels.
you of that, yeah.
Yeah, it reminds
I
me
need
of
to do a float tank.
You would love it. Have you ever tried it?
I need a full mental reset.
Yeah.
Is it how long is
definitely-
it for?
so
Like
down.
an hour?
It
Two?
depends. You pay like I usually they start you off 40 minutes. I could do up to like probably like way over an hour now. Like, and I could just lie there. Sometimes I'll fall asleep, honestly, and have the best nap of my life. you know, it's not for everybody. You have to like not be claustrophobic because it gets a little crazy.
I mean, it's completely dark.
Yeah, and
It's-
but it's nice. Like I did an experience like this that kind of made me feel this way. It was similar when Dave and I went to Mexico. We went into this like
Oh yeah.
hot tent thing. I think we talked about last time.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
they closed all the lights, and I was just like
Sauna.
it's just like all of a sudden you start
Did
really
you guys take
feeling.
psychedelics for that too, or was it that sober moment?
We accidentally took psychedelics.
Yes. So Dave and I
Accidentally?
Well, okay, the night before.
We stayed up all night
Yeah.
drinking mezcal at this crazy like island thing.
I don't even know where it was.
Honestly, really, really cool venue.
Yeah.
And it was so chaotic because we all got sent there by this guy,
Who just disappeared.
and then he never showed up. And then when we got, it was supposed to be this huge after party, and they were like, "We're not having it. Like, we're closed." And so we had to pay them like, so I don't know. We like chipped together money and like paid them like I don't know how much money, but like to have all the staff stay.
Yeah.
And then we threw a party.
And the best part was I don't want to say which artist who speaks Spanish had to talk to them about like to convince him for us to pay him to let the party go on.
Yeah, I don't remember who that was, but we'll talk after the show.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so then we left that experience at like 3 a.m., went back to our Airbnb, and we had to leave for another part of Mexico at 4 a.m. And so we basically just like packed up, and the only way that we could really like stay up was like, oh, like let's eat some chocolates. And so we
Coffee and
just
chocolates.
we're like already like really tipsy, and so we just start munching on mushroom chocolates, and then we have like a 40-minute drive, and we get to this boat, and it was honestly like the most beautiful sunrise I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And you know, but
Did
we're
you have
like,
your camera? Did you get to
oh yeah.
document it?
So well, quick. We're gonna throw up the images right here. Beautiful images. And there's like a shaman with us, and he's blowing on a conch shell as the sun comes up over the mountain. And there's like horses frolicking in the fog.
It's a good movie.
It's really crazy. I'll like all these pictures will be right now as I'm talking.
Yeah.
But then, you know, so we're still, I'm like, frankly, I'm tripping balls, and it's like 6 a.m. and they're like, all right, now we're going to go do this temazcal. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Temazcal?
That's exactly what it is. Wow.
And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. And so like we go to this other like floating, it's like almost like Venice, Italy, where it's like this canal city in Mexico City.
It's like all in the middle of Mexico City. I believe,
Yeah.
really.
It's where like Mexico City like started, and it's where they grow all the flowers and begonias and stuff like that. But so we go to this little section of the island, and it's all misty and beautiful. And they're like, all right, like there's this like underground clay dome, and like, all right, everybody like get in your bathing suits. Like we're gonna go in this thing, and like none of us knew that this was gonna happen. And so like I'm just like on one. And it's me, Benny, Bobby Hundreds, a bunch of other homies, Joe from Infinite Objects, Sergito.
Yeah, Sergio.
And you could fit everybody in this thing.
It was big.
Yeah, was Tony Heron?
Tony's kids came. Tony didn't make it that morning. Yeah,
right,
it was
okay.
his two kids.
Anyway, so we go into this. They have like hot lava rocks that have been on the fire all night, and then they put them in. And they pour water on it, and it becomes it's a completely blacked out steam room.
Like blacked out, you can't see
Anything.
Float tank.
Yes.
But you're sitting there, and then there's a shaman like hitting you with like water and grass and like just like eucalyptus leaves, and there's this whole ceremony about gratitude, and it was honestly really, really beautiful. But by like the fourth round, I had to just step out because I was like just bugging out.
There was
So
like
when you say rounds,
there was eight 20-minute rounds.
No, there's 5.
5 minute 20 minutes. I made it 3. I think Dave made it 4.
No, I was out before you.
Oh, so then maybe did I make the whole thing?
I think you did the whole thing.
Benny pushed through. Benny.
Yeah.
I cried at one point.
Yeah, I was just
crying.
like in a spot in my life that I was not ready to like.
No.
I had a lot going on.
Go that
And
far.
so I
Well,
was
and
just
you
like-
also took the mushrooms, not realizing, like,
Yeah.
holy shit, I'm gonna be in a basically a sauna that's a sensory deprivation.
Yeah,
thing.
it was not the right set and setting, as they say.
It was a
You set
great
yourself up.
No. It was a great experience though. Like and I hope to have more like that because that was special.
Can't say I've always set up the set and setting properly.
No, we've definitely made mistakes, but it's part of what allows us to say, like, hey, if you're listening to this, here's what not to do because we completely
don't
fucked
eat a
up.
gram and like go wander through Bushwick bars and
Yeah.
like try to make yourself get home. It's not the easiest scenario.
But my worst, like one of my worst trips was accidentally being on over a gram at the night of Halloween at a sports bar in Manhattan. And it was just like, everyone's dressed up as witches.
Yeah.
And I'm like, am I in hell? Like, one lady's dressed up as an angel. I'm like, is she going to save
Can
me?
you help
I'm
me?
like, why am I here? And it's
Your
bad.
phones, you can't use your phone.
You call an Uber. You call the Uber. You get a bad Uber rating.
That's why I like to lay down or just sit down and.
But
take a
also
nap.
don't do them in hot tubs like me in Miami and pass out like an idiot. Learn things the hard way that way.
Wait, you passed out in the hot tub?
But no, I got out of the hot tub, but like my blood temperature changed.
Oh, and then you passed out. Oh, right. Okay, now I forgot. Yeah. You're okay.
That was this year?
No. That was
This year they just
2022.
like hung out and watched Cops.
Nope. Yep. We watched Cops on mushrooms this year.
That must have been terrifying as well.
It was
I thought it was
Actually,
I would highly
Dave is a
recommend
rapper.
it.
Can you do the bad boys? Like, bad boys. What you gonna do?
It's not in my repertoire.
Oh, okay, sorry.
the Cops, man. So I've done a few dumb things, but watching Jackass on mushrooms is one of the worst things you can ever do.
Just watching humans suffer.
You like
You're like, why are you doing this?
hurt here. You're like,
Yeah.
oh my god.
It's funny because I can't watch Pixar movies when I'm on shrooms.
Why?
Because I usually cry at Pixar movies anyways.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Once you have kids, you'll understand.
I mean,
I cry for
Because
Miyazaki.
every Pixar movie really is about how fucking your childhood is like these little tiny thing and they grow into these big things. And I'm just like, I don't want that to happen to
should
my
watch the
children.
Pixar
Literally
movies.
every Pixar movie is about that. And I watch it with my kids and they're like, oh my God, I love this movie. And I was like, I don't want you to grow up. Like what's going on
I
here?
don't want you to grow up.
But
So
like that's
you've-
literally every expert.
what you're done having kids.
Yeah, I mean, my wife's done.
so
I
you're
think you're
done.
done too.
Yeah, I think that's a good.
No, we're done. I think that's it. I think I feel like a linebacker.
What do you
Now-
think's the most important thing being a dad of 3 kids has
Oh
taught
man,
you?
I feel like this episode wasn't supposed to be about me,
I
and
don't
I
know.
really opened up. But
I think because you're sitting in the different
yeah, should we switch seats and then
You're
answer
in a
those
love
questions?
sandwich, dude.
Am I?
Nice.
seat.
We're
Whoever
all just
is
here to
in that
vibe.
seat, I seem to make the most eye contact. Well,
man.
Dave's also wearing sunglasses.
It's
So
tough.
I
Yeah,
looked
he's
at
hiding
Dave
from
like,
us. Yeah. The most important thing about being a dad, I think it goes back to what I said before. Like, look, I think that oh man, purpose is something that eludes me.
Yeah.
Okay, personally, and what is my purpose here? What am I doing that's going to help affect anything in the world in a positive way? I think that my relationships with people and artists like Dave and Alien and you and Sam and many other people is that like I hope that I'm somehow helping them in their lives to be some kind of positive purpose, right? So when you have kids, for me, these are individuals that are like little spores that I'm their mushroom and I'm trying to show them that they could be these hugely positive influences in people's lives. And I feel like we don't do that enough in humanity. So inevitably what happens is like, I can't watch the news anymore. It's like you watch the news, it's just like, man, the fucking world sucks.
Oh,
And,
yeah, it's
and you
only
don't
bad
want that.
stuff.
You want like if we all just like stopped and worked and looked at our relationships and what makes them so strong and important. Like I deeply care and feel what other people, like my actions, sometimes I'm always like, am I doing like, do I do this? How many people am I affecting in my life? I don't think about myself as much. And I think so for me, for kids, it's like, all of a sudden you want to kind of pass this on. And then the next part that comes from that is that they are like spores because they grow up and they look like you and they sound like you and they act like you. And then you feel like you have this responsibility of making sure that they're safe. I know it sounds weird, but like, I go to sleep at night, man. And like, I think about all the great stuff that happens in my life, but I'm always scared about like, the safety of my kids. Like it's like this weird feeling that I have of like, am I doing enough to keep them safe? Like not, and then you have these weird feelings of like I'm not, and then that takes you down a road. And then, so you want to be a better parent. And, for me, relationships are the most important thing. I don't feel like I'm anything without them. So my relationships with my kids and my wife are so important, and then a byproduct of my friendships with the people who become my family and who I love. So I think that, like, you know, to me, it's like, look, not everybody wants to be a parent. Like, I was just reading, like, a Seth Rogen's like, I'm very comfortable not being a parent. I'm like, listen, I understand that, and I get that, but there's something so deep and humanistic about the fact that we have this ability to create more of us and to create better parts of us. You know, I'll leave with this. Like, I said to Amira, I'm like, are we being the best parents we can? And, you know, Amira said to me, well, we're better than our parents, and our parents were better than their parents, and their parents were better than their parents. And humanity seems to get better as we go on. So I just want to be a part of that.
I think purpose is definitely something I've struggled with a lot over the last 3 years. Like, I definitely didn't have a purpose before crypto, and I got into crypto with the purpose of, well, I needed to make some money because I don't know if I can do what I'm doing for 30 years and like not kill myself. Like, quite frankly, like, it's just like, you look at people around you and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to make this if I got to do what they did. Like, I don't have the self, I would be not happy with myself. Like, I felt capable of more, but I didn't know what. But like, trying to have purpose without kids is like, you sometimes like you have to transform it. Whereas like, if you have a kid, it's like, you always have the baseline probably of like, I could transform my artistic purpose, my curatorial purpose, my collecting purpose. But like, my purpose at the end of the day is always to raise my kids better than I was raised and to provide for them.
Yeah, I think that,
and I don't have that. I don't think any of us outside of you have that.
No, I think that I think that, you know, Dave has it with his art, and he will in the future, and, you know, Alien has it with his relationships and his with his wife and his shrooms, and and I think you have it your ways. But I think everybody here will have that and be a part of that. I push and always tell people to have kids because, like, that's what's good for. I have appreciated it. Again, it doesn't mean it's for everybody.
I feel like we need to have like kids sooner again. Like, I feel like this trend of us just having kids like 35, 40 is like too late. Like,
well, that's why Jews, we usually do it much sooner. But I waited till I was older. But that was also because I was going through a lot, and I think my wife and I were just trying to figure out, like, you know, when's the best time for me to be in the best understanding. I didn't expect to open up this much, but, you know, we waited 10 years to have kids just for that, because like, we were trying to figure out, like, you know, what, I think it was more about me, about, like, you know, where am I at mentally.
You have like one of the best wives ever. Like, Mira's
She's
the best wife.
Yeah.
Like,
I am very lucky. I have the best wife. I have the best kids, and I will say, since 3-4 years ago, when I've met the people here in this community, I think that I have very close friends that I grew up with, and they are my best friends in the world. But the people I've met recently in the last 4 years, they're more of like, I finally feel like I have people that I could be myself, and I think that that's like a big deal for me.
No, I agree.
You know?
Dave is able to bring us all together.
He is,
and let us be ourselves in a very good environment where we don't need to worry about.
No, Dave does it more than people realize. I'm gonna give him a shout out here. You know, like, I want to be very clear. You know, I in a way bring him on to this podcast a lot, but, you know, there's something about the way Dave, it's, you know, the events that he does are really just part of who he is. And that, to me, is really what an artist is all about. You know, the artist that you and I talk about, and we all talk about, that we love, feels like an extension of who they are here. And I think what Dave does when he builds these relationships in IRL, not just for himself, but for everybody, it truly feels like this extension of who you are. And I think that's a very special thing. So it's not like, oh, let's just go do an ape event. You're like, no, let's do something where we're going to have people connect to make a difference. And I find that to be special.
How have you been able to keep like you said, you keep the vibe so good, but it's also so inclusive? Like, how do you think that works? Because I feel like a lot of things, especially in the crypto space, like, I saw it with Punk's chat, Art Blocks Discord, some of these public hubs that got, you know, vibrationally shifted over time. Like, the Allships vibes have been like 3 years now for me since we met in 2021. Like, how do you keep it consistent and also inclusive?
Well, there's two things, and this is going to be a challenge moving forward because of the way that we're planning to scale and the way that we're planning to incorporate tokenization. But basically, like, the second you introduce financial instruments into a community, like that's the vibe shift. Like, I'm sure the glory days of like the punks Discord were probably when punks were pretty cheap.
They were like under 10 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but when a punk is worth 150K,
It's different.
that's a different type of club.
Yep. Same with Squiggles.
Yeah.
Squiggles, when they were $30 the mint,
Yeah.
way different than.
So, Allships doesn't have a product like that. And that's, so far, it's been intentional. We've explored, during every meta.
You could have done a mint.
Yeah, we could have done 10,000 astronauts or something like that.
Open editions. Yeah.
Open editions.
Spaceships.
We could have done a pass. We've talked to a bunch of different people, gotten pretty far along on some of these ideas. And at the end of the day, it's like preserving the flexibility and the ethos of this idea that like all ships rise with the tide, like, will always be my priority over like making a huge amount of money in one day.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think some other communities have suffered tremendously because of how the prices ran away from them. Like, look at like a proof pass, right? Like, I love the proof team, and like I think their ideas and concepts are so dope and creative, but they suffer from something that's not even their fault, which is that people speculated on that so hard that it created this tidal wave of expectations that like no one was ever going to meet.
Yeah.
And that's like a grassroots problem, not like a organizational problem. And I think that if I did something similar with Allships at the wrong time or with the wrong intention, I would basically sink the boat. And so I'm just moving very, very slowly and with intention. And I think our biggest ideas, when does this come out? 2 months?
Yeah, give or take. And it can be at the end of the season, so it could be closer to 3.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're gonna do something that hasn't been done before. And it's gonna basically be rooted in reality with Web3 components. But again, a culture company, not a Web3 company.
That's what separates our events versus any of the events you go to wherever you're at one of these collections. Like, we care about the hospitality part of the event, and we care about like how your experience is being there and networking with people and talking to people and like having a good time versus like trying to gain something from the people at the party. Like, we want to get, I'd rather give a good experience than gain from the people at the time too, because those experiences in that time we will eventually benefit from.
Well, people know, like I was saying, like we've watched for 3 years now, and it's super intentional, and it's very clear from the people watching. At least to me, it's clear.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been lucky to get to know you well, but it's something that is impressive because it takes a lot of thought and constraint to not just like, hey, like we could just do an open edition or we could do this thing, and like.
But it is definitely intentional. I mean, like Allships is older than Web3, right?
Well, I don't think it's older than Web3. Like, I mean, I guess it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In some ways. And I feel like you've changed the way Allships is being built. Instead of saying stagnant, it's like, okay, I see what happened. I see how to make it better. It's like, to me, like, when you say things like, oh, we're working on some amazing things, it's like, okay, great. Like, you get the next cycle. It's like, okay, here it comes again. But we're not going to do it the same way. We're going to do it different, which builds it stronger, which builds a community stronger, which makes it not about the cash value, but the IRL experiences, which have more value, right? Like, that to me is exactly how we build. But like, really, it's the right way to build. So, I mean, to me, like, I'm excited for what Allships is going to bring. Allships ride with the tide. I know you have to run. You have to leave at 4. So let's try to close it out. So I'm going to say just closing statements, and then we'll ask your question, and then we'll go.
Have we asked? We haven't asked Dave this question.
I don't think we did because it was before that. Yeah. So thank you guys for coming.
If you guys always, I can stay if you need to like rattle off more. Questions. Like,
so let's close it because Dave's here, and then we can add after. So thank you guys for coming. It means a lot. I feel like you have introduced me into this mycelium. I feel like a mycelium little family with the 3 of you. And these hold these hand. Now we're all connected.
Vibration.
It's great.
But I love you guys dearly. Like, I feel very strongly about saying this. I don't usually open up, so being here with people that allow me
I never
to.
have
The feeling
things
is
we talk
mutual.
about on this.
Yeah,
Very
but
appreciative.
So I do love you guys, and thank you guys for coming. And I know you have a lot of exciting things this year, so we're gonna help, promote that and push it, and and with that, I'll let Deez ask his question, and then we can.
Yeah, so we have a question. It is, imagine you're shipwrecked on an island. You can only bring one album with you, and the album either has to help you get off the island or make you content with just spending the rest of your days on the island until it's over.
A music
Like
album?
musical
Yeah,
album?
yeah, music.
Right now, it would probably be the songs of Leonard Cohen.
Okay.
Like one of his greatest hits from like the early days.
Love that.
That's just been my like absolute saving grace right now.
Nice.
So it's just
That's the
really
vibes
great.
this week.
Such a deep story. Also,
Yeah.
he had
My music is constantly changing. I'd say something that I'm listening from beginning to end a lot lately is, and it's coming back, is like Radiohead Kid A. That album has like been hitting really hard for me lately,
The nostalgia
and it doesn't
from
really
that
get
one.
old. Yeah, I'll stick with that. I guess it's not my typical answer, but that's
like
what
it.
I've been listening to a lot lately. Yeah.
Yeah.
that, and knowing it's true about Dave.
Yeah, for sure.
And on that note,
It's over. Finn,
I love you guys. Thank you guys. Deez.
as always.
We have more episodes coming in April, but this was great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we'll be back
usual as
for
a
New York.
co-host. I love you.
Love you guys so much. Thanks for having me.
Love
Thank
this
you.
here.